Business deadlines.
Deadlines.
Trust problems, which could come from a lot of places.
Trust
manifest
problems.
in lots of different ways. It could be a personality problem.
Yeah.
It could be sort of a manager or product owner who's sort of wearing blinders, has this attitude of, I know how to do this, and not considering other people on the team may have great ideas to contribute as well.
Absolutely. People have blind spots. Right? Trust issues. And I heard three or four of those. The first four, honestly, are all what I would knock down to trust. And if you look in Patrick Leahy's 5 Dysfunctions of Teams and what you need to build, unlock, the first one is trust. You can have a team if you have trust. The problem is that's like a fallow kind of word that everybody says it a lot, but how do you improve trust? Crank trust to 11.
There's lots of different ways that you can have a trust problem. Sometimes it's the personality of the individual,
Yeah,
and maybe you can fix that person's behavior, or
so you can never fix another person's behavior. I've tried I've been married long enough to know. And I say that loving that. I mean, my wife's trying to change my behavior and it's not working.
Yeah, so sometimes trust comes or trust gap comes because somebody just doesn't have the technical competency. And again, you can look at try to build their skills or make a change in personality.
Yeah, I like to kind of sum it up by saying the only way to build trust, the only way I have ever seen trust be built is by exercising vulnerability. It's the only way. Because we work in a human dynamic that says, I will not trust you until you trust me. So we have a first mover problem. Trust me, come on, trust me. And she's saying, trust me, and we have a stalemate. The minute that I become vulnerable, what am I doing?
Extending trust.
I'm basically saying, here it is. You have the ability to totally, absolutely, positively make my life miserable in some way because I've become vulnerable. And if you don't violate that, you just built trust. I now trust you. And we reciprocate that. When somebody extends vulnerability to us and we trust it, a bond starts to get created that now I'm willing to become vulnerable because that person was the first mover. Right? So, I don't know, maybe the way we build trust in an organization is stop being stubborn. And we need stubborn courses. Like stop being stubborn and be the first one to kind of lay it down and be vulnerable. I think when you start to see teams start to exercise vulnerability with each other, trust goes pretty quick because it's almost viable, right? But that said, all it takes, one person violating trust, you can do a whole lot of damage, and that's the problem. Right? When somebody violates trust, they don't violate one step of trust, they cascade down pretty deep. Chain reaction, right? What else? What were some other items?
Resistance to change. Resistance to change.
Resistance to change, man. People are stubborn. It's hard. Change is hard. Furthermore, you can't make people change. All you can do is encourage it. And the problem is not everybody's ready to change at the same level. Generally, people don't change until pain points at a really high threshold. Some people, they're ready to change right now because they are in a lot of pain. Other people, hey, my mortgage is paid. Where I see this the most is management. Hey, I'm controlling everybody. Life's pretty good to me. When I get yelled at, I can just scream at everybody. And I get paid. Sounds good to me. You know how much golf I got in this year? I'm on a PGA tour. Right? What do you think my propensity to change is? Probably not a whole lot. Because change for me means I'm going to have to become more responsible. I'm going to have to become accountable. I'm going to have to become vulnerable. Man, those sound like a lot of evil words to me. Can't I just control you? Right? So usually the higher up the team organization chart you go, the harder change is because they feel like they're losing a lot more. If you don't have a whole lot to lose, change becomes pretty easy. Change is usually an upswing. Right? If you see change as a downswing, you're going to resist it a lot more, or your pain is not as high. What else?
Organizations that foster us versus them mentalities.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that empire building thing, right? There are some people that they want that. That is what they thrive on. They thrive on the ability to say, instead of looking at the competition being external to their company or external to their sector, they look at competition as the manager in the cube next to them or the team next to them. Right? So if I have got more people than you've got people, and I'm winning, never mind we're making our company lose because we're at war. Right? I usually see this at a silo level a little bit higher than development. Usually it's like the finance guy and the CFO and the CTO are at war, right? Or the CEO and the COO or whoever, right? But there's some positioning that's happening that is really causing problems. What else?
Organizations that have a lack of drive for quality or respect for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm trying to think of a good way to express that. I think the problem is, for the most part, the market doesn't care much about quality in the sense of they'll accept just good enough, right? So if it's cheap enough and fast enough, it's not all that quality, that's okay. Like, there's a small amount of the market that says, you know, I'll pay more or wait longer for something that's high quality. And so because of that, I think a lot of times it's very hard for the top of the organization to care, right? Because they're saying, well, why can't we just ship it as it is? Like, it's as good as our competition, so like that's good enough and we can make money on it, right? They don't understand the emotional damage they're doing to everybody in the organization by saying, we don't really care about your work. We just want to make $1, we don't really care about your work. I don't care if you're doing a good job or not, it doesn't really matter, we just want to make money.
But why shouldn't we think about them though, if it gets that sale?
What's that?
Why shouldn't we think about
Yeah,
things
so,
like
so I mean,
because it does make the sale?
I think that that is a great vantage point. Where I think that it falls short, and this is probably a whole other talk. I love where you're going with the topic, but I think it's a whole other talk. Is the problem is that organizations get stuck. Okay, and what I mean by get stuck is when the bar has no excellence set. It's really just whatever it takes to make a buck. At some point, somebody else is going to do it faster and cheaper than you, and that's a race to the bottom, because it demotivates and devalues everyone in your organization. So you can get away with it for a while, but at some point, your top people start to leave because they don't feel valued, in which case you're not able to innovate anymore, and when you're not able to innovate anymore, you are not going to get the things that allow you to cut costs and to cut, time to market the way you could before, and then you're lost. And I see this in almost every 500-pound gorilla that I get brought into, is at some point they were two folks in a garage doing really awesome innovative stuff. They build up to an organization, 10, 15,000 people. They start to lose their innovation. All they care about is competing on price and time to market, and they become the 500-pound gorilla. And that works for a while because they're the 500-pound gorilla. Like, hey man, people buy our stuff because we're us. Like, who else are you going to buy? I mean, if you were an operating systems provider 5 years ago, who else are you going to buy other than Microsoft? I mean, they're the only, they're the logical choice. Maybe even 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago is not long enough back. But at some point, they just wrote on that, right? Okay, we'll make it $99. Okay, we'll make it $79. But at some point, they stop innovating. When they stop innovating, they start to lose market share. When they start to lose market share, they panic. When they panic, they no longer have the talent to get them out of that rut, right? So the problem is it's a short-term thinking, right?
And good enough doesn't get you thinking about improving it. It lets you slip that baseline lower.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to, if you're the type of athlete that when you walk off the field and you said, we won the championship, awesome. Next year, you're probably not going to win a championship. If you walk off the field and said, man, we only beat those guys 1-0 in Game 7, that, like, we got lucky. Well, what are we going to do to make sure that it's done in 4 games next year? You might stand a chance, right? And that's what starts to happen.
Isn't it opposite also true in that you have a group of, let's say, venture capitalists or people that are looking for the product and it doesn't ship because you have personalities involved in it that want it to be so perfect it can't get out the door. And at some point it's like, hey, now it's diminishing returns. Nobody's seeing this thing.
Yeah. So
We got to ship.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can overanalyze and overthink and over whatever. I think it's a game of pragmatism, right? Like, so if you're only doing lowest cost, you don't care about quality, you don't. I mean, at every point in a company's life cycle, they have to balance a number of things. And I think where things get mixed up is when they get way out of whack, right? When it's only about the dollar, it's only about shipping it really quick. They don't really care about the quality. They don't care about why they're doing it. They're probably not going to succeed very long. If they care about having the highest quality, absolute everything, aren't sensitive to price demand, aren't sensitive to market, they're never going to sell something and they're going to go out of business. Also wrong, right? You have to have some balance in there.
I think the way I would describe that situation is executives have to see business value in quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because if they don't, then they might go to one extreme or the other. They might start using phrases like zero defects, which is nonsense, right? The product is never going to ship with 0 defects. If you actually want us to do it that way, it's just never going to ship. On the other hand, if they don't see any value in the quality, then you get a push on features, price, and time to market, and that's it. And it's slap something together, rush it out the door, and then maybe you sell that fine for one generation, but the second time around, your customers won't come back.
Oh, yeah, I have a date-driven development where we have to ship it by a certain date regardless of how good.
That's okay. I think that's perfectly fine. As long as you're willing to not have to deliver all the scope. The minute that you've got date-driven development and scope-driven development, you're pretty much screwed. Unless you've got unlimited resources.
Yes.
Even then you're probably swimming upstream. All right, so some of the things we think, old thinking, control. I mean, this is to me the #1 killer. Because we talked about having to have empowered teams and being vulnerable. People that have a lot of control have no interest in being vulnerable and have no interest in allowing the people that they're currently controlling to have any kind of say in anything. It's like dealing with a 2-year-old. Ever seen a 2-year-old tantrum? It's a control issue. The parent that looks at him and says, "You look silly," and keeps walking, probably dealing with things okay. The one that gives into that, what do you think that 2-year-old's going to do every time they want something? Managers are no different. They know how to tantrum like the best of them. I don't like what you're doing. Watch this tantrum. Okay? So old thinking, control. Lack of trust. Right? And that's the #1 reason they don't want to give up control. I mean, some of it's power, but some of it is they don't believe in their people. Managers that like to control don't believe in their people. They don't believe their people are capable of learning. They don't believe that their people are capable of doing a good job. Which is silly. Like every time I encounter a manager like this, I say, why do you hire them? Why do you hire people that you don't trust? Makes no sense to me. Well, I can't let them make the decision. They'll screw it up. Well, fire them. Well, I can't fire them. I need them. They're a good developer. Well, they're a good developer. Let them make the decision. I can't. They'll screw it up. Happens every day. Another thing is not being human. Sounds fluffy, sounds goofy, but we've extracted a lot of the humanity out of the work that we do. And when we're able to be much more human, what we really do is open or grease the skids for vulnerability, which then builds on to trust. Nobody likes to hear that they're having a bad hair day. Okay? If somebody tells you you have a bad hair day and they're not like making fun of you about it, you probably respect them that like, hey, next time they tell me something, like, I know they're being pretty honest with me. Okay? We've kind of like sugar-coated everything down that it's just kind of like, yeah, the person flies down, I'm just going to keep walking right on by and not saying anything because it's embarrassing to them, it's embarrassing to me, whatever, right? And then what happens when you find that you're the one on the fly down? You're like, I passed 35 people today, I sat in a meeting with 30 people and nobody said anything to me. What a jerk. Right? And if you went and asked him, hey, I think there's someone on the fly with him. Oh, the salt was down. I don't know, it was weird. Thanks. Right? I was driving a car for a while that had a gas cap that's broken. Always open. And it's hilarious because you can tell the people that are a little more human, they come up stoplight, they say, hey, your gas cap's open. Now, granted, it's irritating because I get it a lot because the thing's always open. I know it's broken and it's okay, right? But it's a surprisingly small amount. Maybe once a day. I drive in a lot of traffic. I probably pass 40,000 cars a day. 1 in 40,000 people have the humanity to say, hey, did you know that gas cap, it also doesn't have air conditioning, so the windows are down. So it's not like they can't hear me. Right? But we do this in work. We have thousands of interactions that we just totally ignore, totally let pass us by. How many meetings have you sat in, and 3 minutes into your meeting, you're like, this meeting is a total waste of time? Who's been in that meeting? Raise your hand if
Is
you've
it
been
the
in that meeting.
outside voice or the inside voice?
Inside voice. Inside voice. How many of you at that point said, I think this meeting is absolutely wasting everybody's time and this is what I think we should do instead? Your hand should be up. That's the human thing to do. Don't let your friends be enslaved in a meeting. Especially the boy wife. It's got food, fat guy. You might let him be nice and carry on. We need to be more human. Okay? impediments. Right? So we now know some of these things to look for. We know what imposes on us. Right? How do we start to identify them? So I mean, we've talked a lot of like esoteric stuff in here. How do we start to put this in practice? When you go back, how are you going to start to identify problems that are impeding your culture?
Ask the people on the lot.
Retrospectives, surveys, water cooler talk. Instead of talking about how much you hate so-and-so, you can start to say like, hey, well, you know, how can we make this place better? Not how does it suck, how do we make it better? What else? How else can you identify impediments?
If you challenge yourself, you're more likely to find pain points in your organization.
Set a bar, do an experiment, see if you can hit the bar. If you don't hit the bar, ask yourself why. What happened? How come we didn't do it? What else? What are other ways we can identify impediments?
Ask why at least 3 times.
Ask why at least 3 times when something goes wrong. Absolutely. What else? What are some other ways we can identify impediments? Who here observes pretty religiously the work they do?
What do you mean?
So, if I'm a basketball player and I go out and I play a game, I'm an NBA
Okay.
player, do I have a way to know how I play? What are some ways as an NBA player I know how I play? Stats. I could go back to the stat sheets, right? Hey, I made 9 out of 9 free throws. Perfect. I made 3 out of 21 field goal attempts.
Need to work on
I
that.
need to work on that a little bit. I had 4 fouls. My coach doesn't like fouls. I need to work on that. Right? Didn't have assists. What? I've got some stats. I could watch game film. Right? I could actually go back and watch my performance and analyze it. I could probably open up the front page of whatever city I live in's newspaper sports section, and they're probably, if my name's not in there at all, I'm invisible. If it's in there, I either did something probably bad or something good, but I've got other feedback. What are your feedback mechanisms where you're at? Do you keep journals of your work? Do you keep statistics of your work? Do you have ability to ask for feedback from other people on a regular basis? Or is the only time you get feedback is once a year during your annual review that is like atrocious? I'm going to challenge you and say if you do not have feedback mechanisms, multiple of them, that you diligently look at, you are part of the problem. Because you do not have a standard at all. Because you can't have a standard if you're not measuring your performance against the bar that you're setting for yourself. So you have to set a standard for yourself, and you have to measure against that standard in some way. I'm not talking necessarily has to be like a statutory entirely. You have to have some form of ability to get feedback. Could be to ask a peer on a regular basis. It has to be continuous. It can't be once a year, once a quarter. It has to be daily feedback. Every time you perform, you need to look at your performance. I assume you go to work probably 4 or 5 days a week, means you should be looking at your performance 4 or 5 days a week. So what are some practical ways to improve? Okay, so we go out, we say we're going to set the standard for ourselves. Maybe we'll get some other people on the team to buy in, we set a standard as a team. Maybe we're really lucky we got an organization, the organization's setting a standard. Maybe we're getting some feedback, we got some feedback. How do I improve now that I'm getting this feedback? Getting this feedback that I'm not so good at something. How do I start to improve?
Try something different.
Try something different, right? Figure out what's causing it. If I suck at free throws, is my technique bad? You know, we like to call this deliberate practice, right? So if you look at the science, whether it be Gladwell, whether it be, can't remember the other guy that's done a fair amount of research in the area, or a fair amount of literature in the area. It's Why is Talent Overrated is the name of the book. I don't know the author's name. There's really 2 ways to improve. Do more of it, right? So I'm not good at X, so I'm going to do more of X. I've never written Java code, so I'm going to write more Java code. That's the way to get better. Problem is that's going to plateau. good before like I'm not getting any better at Java. So then I have to say I have to be deliberate about it. Right? How can I specifically get better? Right? So if I go shoot free throws for a while, I'll get better at free throws just because I'm doing more free throws. At some point it's going to plateau and I'm going to have to say, oh, it's the way I'm bending my knees is wrong. I need to adjust that specific thing. I'm going to specifically practice the way that I'm bending my knees. So one way, do more of something. If you're a novice, that's a really good way. Because if you're a novice, there's a lot of room for improvement. If you're not a novice, it's really hard to go from an intermediate to an expert without deliberate practice.
Set realistic goals,
Yep.
and then track your progress towards those goals,
Yeah.
and then review your progress.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of the, you have to measure it, right? You have to get that feedback. You have to set the bar. You have to measure your performance getting to that bar, and then you have to reflect. So when you reflect back and you know that you're short of performance, right, how do you improve? One way to improve? Do more of something. Another way to improve? Deliberate practice. How do you get deliberate practice in what you do?
Set a project, you would work towards achieving that project.
Yeah, but if you don't know what you don't know, right? So when you got practice, you could say, hey, I want to do Java. So tonight I'm going to go home and I'm going to go do a side project in Java so I can learn more Java. Well, at some point, if you've got 10,000 hours of Java, well, how are you going to get better at Java?
Get a mentor.
Get a mentor, right? A mentor, a coach, somebody who knows more than you to help you. Say like, hey man, I've been doing these free throws, like, and I got my, over the last 6 months, I got my free throw percentage up to 80%, but I'm stuck. Man, I cannot get over 80%. I don't know what to do. You know who I'm going to call? I'm going to call Rick Berry. That guy's got like a 98% free throw percentage lifetime. That's who I'm going to call. Because he obviously knows how to shoot free throws better than I do. Okay? So you got to find somebody to basically help move you forward. Right? Whether it be a mentor or a coach. How many of your organizations have valid mentorship or coaching internally to your organization to help improve? See the problem? One group, lucky. It's hard. Improvement's really hard, and if you don't have the support to do it, it's almost impossible. If nobody's encouraging you to improve and helping you and giving you the tools and the resources to do it, and I mean, most of you, the biggest problem you have is time. You can't do deliberate practice because practice means you're not doing the real thing. So how do we deal with management? Say you want to set that bar, you're willing to get the feedback, you're willing to do the improvement. At some point, management is going to become a problem. What do you do when they become the impediment?
Feedback.
What's that?
Feedback up.
Feedback up? What do we do?
Approach it in a win-win situation,
Approach it in a win-win situation?
or propose a win-win solution.
Propose a win-win solution? What else?
Well, you have to get your management bought into what you're doing. A lot of organizations I've worked with in the past said, we're going to do Scrum, we're going to do XP, we're going to do Agile. And they said that at a dev team level. And the problem was that the general manager in charge of the division still expected his entire communication interface to be waterfall. So you have to make sure that your top management is on board with you. And of course, the way to do that is to propose in a win-win. Hey, Mr. Executive or Ms. Executive, we're going to use a different process. We want you to be aware of it, but here's the improved visibility that you're going to get, and your enhanced ability to forecast when the release is coming.
So nobody's going to like my answer to this one. Because it's hard to hear. What's that? No. Going over the manager's head is generally not effective. I mean, sometimes you can do that if you've got the right personality and the stars are aligned and you've got access to over their head. But generally it's still never, I mean, it's a long and bloody path to get there, right? Okay.
Just be upfront and talk to them.
Yeah, so I mean the best thing you can do is perform. So if you're sitting there measuring your performance and improving, most reasonable managers will respect that. And if you approach it is, hey, look at how I'm improving, I can help you improve if you'll let me help. If they're open to that, it can be a win-win. If they're not, leave. I'm dead serious. You look at great athletes, they will not stay on crappy teams. not stay on a crappy team for very long. They won't. Why? Because they have a purpose. They want to win whatever championship, EuroLeague, whatever it is for their sport. And they know that if they're one of the best in the game, and they're on a team where the general manager will not hire the right people to get on that, will not set the bar, will not get the right coach, will not be in the right thing, they leave. That's hard to hear. That is really, really hard to hear. But why would you keep yourself in a prison that you can change? Because I'm telling you right now, I deal with companies all the time. You know what good companies are looking for? People that want to set a bar and are willing to work towards it. So if you're willing to do those things, you're a valuable employee to the best companies in the world. So why on earth would you work for a crappy one? Why? Because I think until people start doing that, managers have no incentive to change. Until the best people refuse to work for them, they have no incentive to change. It's painful. I mean, it sucks. Changing jobs is hard. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I mean, it's a major life event to change a job. But being miserable every day is a pretty soul-sucking to everybody around you. Right? So I'm not saying just go leave your job right now today. I'm saying, improve yourself first. Right? Because like I said, you're the problem. When you can improve yourself and move yourself forward, I guarantee you, when you start to do that, you will no longer tolerate bad management. Because you're working hard. If you're working hard for yourself, why would you work for somebody that's an idiot? You tolerate it now because you don't have your level set. You've calibrated your standard of excellence to your current management. And the minute you recalibrate that, I guarantee you, you will not tolerate it for very long if they're not supportive of it.
What if
I'd
the
say
hard work
it's-
is not appreciated, you know?
What's that?
Nobody realizes your hard work and the effort that you invest in it.
That's what I'm saying. Just leave.
So,
Change companies.
Would you marry somebody that didn't love you?
how damages you can, go through in your life.
No, well, that's why I said you got to look at yourself, right? So I mean, I think that's what we do right now. I think we don't set a bar, we don't do much for ourselves, and we just kind of, either suffer through or we jump from company to company to company. When you start to set that bar, you won't go work for just any company, right? You're gonna take a lot more time to figure out who you want to work for if you've got that bar set. You won't just go work for anybody. You know what you're looking for. It goes back to the purpose. When you know what your bar is and you know what kind of people you want to be surrounded with, you know it when you see it. So when you go interview for a company, they're not interviewing you, you're interviewing them. I'm not going to work for these people, no way.
The best situation is to have several QA groups within that company.
Yeah.
So you can move to a different group
Yeah.
instead of having.
In big companies, I'll be honest, I'll say 50% of managers are not willing to change, 50% are. The great thing is in a big company, that doesn't mean you have to leave your company. It just means you have to leave your manager. And so if I'm going to go over my manager's head to about something, what I'd probably do is say, hey, there's so script, and I'm not going to go to their boss, I'm going to go to the manager I want to go to. I'm going to go, you know what, I see what you're doing with your team, I really respect it, and this is what I'm doing, and this is how I'm improving, and I really think I can help your team, and I'd love to have the chance to do that. Is there some way we could work out that I could get on your team? You know what that manager's going to do? Because if they're the 50% that understands this stuff, they're going to want to snap you up in a heartbeat. Because I guarantee you they've got a troll on their team that they want to get rid of so bad they don't know what to do with. They're going to go right back to their boss and say, I had this really great idea. We've not moved the teams in a long time. And, I'm just thinking we should probably switch some up. And if I were to do that, these are the two people I would switch. Right, what do you think the other 50% manager does? Doesn't care? They don't care. They don't care who their people are because they don't care. They're not human. They don't care about people. Fine. Give me resource 369 in exchange for resource 475. In fact, their pay is a little bit less, so that helps my budget out anyways. Right? So is it possible at scale? Really? You know what I mean when I say at scale? Is it possible for a very large organization to actually exhibit these things? Is it possible for a very large organization to actually exhibit this type of culture? So So we can say like, hey, maybe it's really easy to say like, okay, yeah, if you're this little startup and there's 5 people in the company and you all have equity in the company, like, yeah, that's really easy. You guys can do all this stuff and you can really create this culture. Maybe you can scale it to 100 people or so and really have this really nice tight culture. But come on, like, I mean, this company's 50 years old and we've got 10,000 people. Is this crap really possible?
It's harder, but yes.
My answer is I don't know, because I've not seen it yet.
I was just gonna say that.
I've not seen it yet.
Theoretically possible, I've never seen it in a big company.
I've never seen it. So the theories that I'm running with right now is we have a human capacity to connect to about 300 people, functionally. Beyond 300, and it's probably a little less than 300, it's probably, the biggest company I've seen that has been able to do this kind of things, around 300 to 400 people. So my theory is, at some point, our human capacity to actually be human with each other starts to degrade the bigger the group gets. Okay? The bigger the gang gets, the harder it is to have trust, the harder it is to be vulnerable, the harder it is to communicate. All of these things start to degrade pretty quickly. So I'm not going to say no way is it possible, but I'm going to say I've only seen it at scale of about 300 to 400 people. And that's pretty rare. It takes a pretty special leader to be able to sustain a team that is got a strong enough purpose to be disciplined to have this excellence. Hard. I think this is why you see bigger companies start to make like divisions. Hey, we're going to create this division. What they're trying to do is segment. They're trying to say, how can we keep some of the good things of being a big company, but deal with not have to deal with the crap of having too many people. The problem is the shared services are usually what kills them. Because those shared services, like, okay, we share CFO or we share facilities. Okay, great, this team of 300 over here, this group of 300, this division of 300, doing this really great thing and they're getting all this thing, and then now they want to change their office environment. And facility says, nope, got to put in request form 395, you wait 6 months for approval from the operational review board community, and we'll get back. And like that just sucks the life right out of the momentum that is being built up, right? So, I mean, I think it's really hard, even when big companies try to segregate themselves, if they have anything left that's a shared service, if that shared service isn't got the same culture, it has the ability to basically bomb everything that depends on it. So I don't know. If you guys see this, please email me, call me, let me know. I'd love to talk to the CEO of a company of greater than 400 people that is really got this at scale. Morningstar is probably one of the biggest ones I've seen at this, but they're, not much over 400, and I think they're struggling as they continue to grow. Any questions? I don't know how we're doing on time.
About 2 more minutes.
2 more? Any questions? No questions? Valuable at all. So in the willingness to practice what I preach, being vulnerable, was this session valuable to you? What could I do to make it better? What could I have done today to make this a better experience for you?
It's not really a critique, but I keep listening for, since a lot of times, I'm always listening for what I can do to communicate outwards, but to be honest, it's often a futile fight, and at the end of the day, I'm left with kind of the challenge, I guess, in a way that you posed, do you stay or not? But having done this for 20 years, after a while, you're like, I'm really getting tired of being the one that has to move on, and I'm kind of at a place where I want to
not willing to recalibrate at all or to move forward, like, you're gonna be on a pretty hard road. But excellent feedback, thank you. Any other feedback? It's okay, I can take brutal feedback.
Didn't we, need a reading list of some of the things that.
Reading list. I'm on Goodreads.com. If you go to Goodreads.com, probably under my profile, I believe there's like lists that I've created. I've got one out there for like coaching, one for like organizational psychology, one for organizational development, one for like system thinking. I've got them broken down by category, and I'll have all the books that I'm a pretty avid reader, so that's out there. But you're right, I should probably put something on the slides for that.
That's the neighbors.
On Goodreads, I think you just search for Derek Neighbors, it'll probably come up. Any other questions? Feedback? Oh, come on, I want more feedback.
You did a great job.
I had a lot of ums and ohs and like, so I think that's something, I'm nervous if you only gave me 2 things, because I'm going to list 100 things, in my mind, I totally failed at today.
I heard time management because you skipped a slide.
Yeah, well, I skipped a lot of slides because I reused talks for some things that are half days. But yes, my time management is I did not know what time this session ended, so I had no idea what my time box was, and I had to ask like 3 times. I'm literally embarrassed by that. Like, that is so unprofessional of me, but like, I'm an idiot. I didn't ask.
I know you're looking for negative feedback, but I don't have it. I want to say if you did ums and ohs, I didn't notice them because I was really engaged in what you were saying and inspired. And you actually, I've been considering looking for other work, and I've been laid off from small companies before, so I was kind of hesitant to look in that direction, wanting the stability of something big. This changed my mind.
I'm sorry.
I think I'd rather take a
Arm break.
chance of having that be possible.
Okay. All right, I think I'm past my time, so thanks for inviting me, Bob.
Thank you, Derek. Okay, while Derek finishes up here, so want to come in and say, on the back of your name badges is the schedule.